Another update across the major indices with the S&P 500 up 0.38%, closing at 5633.07. The two largest positive and negative net gamma exposure concentrations sitting at the 5600 level and 5635 level, so right where we closed today on the upside. We've got both of our dealer cluster zones very close together, kind of a congestion zone here in the market, which makes sense as we've basically bounced off this lower 5500 strike a couple of times now already. If you recall in yesterday's video, we said that bulls are going to want to see a break of this high. We had a big up day yesterday, basically an open lower with a big reversal candle closing near the highs. And so bulls obviously were wanting to see a continuation today, which they got. Not a massive move, but higher nonetheless. The technicals are still pointing lower, the 50-day EMA and the 20-period whole moving average, which are two levels that we are watching for potential next targets if this bullish momentum should continue. On the downside, however, a break below this 5500 level would be really bad for the market, but would be great for bears. A break below that level and we could see some serious downside, potentially to the big 5000 strike below that. So that would be a pretty nasty continuation lower of this downtrend that we've seen throughout the month of March. In terms of the historical gamma exposure data, today we got close to being back into positive gamma exposure. We had a brief blip above zero gamma exposure towards the end of March, but basically since the February OPEX, we have been decidedly in negative gamma exposure territory, just really not able to get up off the mat. I think today was a big move. We need to see, again, a continuation back into positive gamma exposure territory. And so we'll be monitoring this, of course, as always, in real time in our community Discord. I'll put a link in the description below for you guys to check that out. So definitely come on in and say hi and see what we're discussing. Link in the description below.
Thanks, Anthony. I know yesterday we were both independently leaning toward more upside as being the highest probability action. Of course, it wasn't without some adventure today with the back and forth. One thing that I don't like is that we haven't really seen large increases in GEX at higher strikes just yet. You can see, especially with QQQ that I have pulled up now, most of the GEX clusters at these higher strikes are relatively small. And that's kind of reflected too in our upper dealer cluster zone, right above where we're at. The option market positioning is not indicating a lot of room for immediate upside. What I'd like to see, though, is for a little bit more continuation. If we can at least retest the bottom of this whole moving average, the yellow line, which is 479.51 on QQQ, it happens to be 5680 or 5681 for SPX. So if we can see maybe another 1 or 2% upside here, even if we exceeded it and then faded below, the bounce so far has been somewhat weak, and it'd be nice to see a little bit more before we're at that next decision point.
Yeah, Sean, it'd be nice to see the Qs take the lead in the market, especially when it comes to the technicals. Same thing for IWM. IWM just, languishing here around this 195 to 200 level. I think you had brought this up last week that this 195 strike, which has been the largest negative gamma exposure concentration going back now for the last couple of weeks, that was likely to get tagged before we saw any meaningful upside. We nearly hit that yesterday, and so not much of a bounce yet. Still more negative gamma exposure building here on IWM. In prior instances, IWM sometimes has been the leader for market rallies. Not in this case so far. We did have pretty big volume coming in at the 200 strike as well as the 190 strike. So nothing definitive in terms of volume at higher strikes, which we would like to see coming into the options market, indicating that speculators are coming back into small caps. So we're not seeing that yet. For us, I think we would need to see a move basically back up to the 210 level to at least get some bullish momentum. That would probably meet this 50-day EMA here, somewhere in there. If we can get back above that level, that would probably be a big momentum boost for bulls back into small caps. But I think it's going to take at least a few more trading sessions to even have that chance. So for now, we're just sitting on our hands watching IWM from the sidelines.
Thanks, Anthony. One stock that we covered a few weeks ago that we can take another look at today is Alcoa, AA. And this stock had a pretty nice move, actually, after we first highlighted it, moving up toward this 35 area, as you can see here. But of course, since then, with the market weakness, it's completely fallen apart in the very short term. But what I like about it is that we are at this dealer cluster zone in the 30 area. I do want to watch this lower Keltner channel, but for the most part, I would expect this to have pretty good odds of holding up in the 30 area. And this goes back several years, actually, which we won't look at right now, but it goes back several years as a prior resistance turn support. Overall, the stock has not done a lot in the last few years, but every time we see these up and down moves like this, it has me watching for the channel and buying the support and selling resistance. And at this point, 35, according to the market positioning, looks like a pretty solid target.
Thanks, Sean. Next, I want to take a look at Palantir. Not much of a move today, basically flat, hovering right below the 85 level. The largest gamma exposure concentrations are sitting at the 90 strike and the 100 strike. So two levels that we are watching for. We saw a pretty substantial bounce out of our lower dealer cluster zone. That's this green box here highlighted right at the 80 strike. So nearly a 5% bounce yesterday. And not only is this our lower dealer cluster zone here at the 80 strike, but it's also a really great support area and resistance going back into December. So hitting resistance multiple times before the big breakout in late January, now bouncing as support here on the underside. So our bet is that this 80 level will hold as a zone of support, and that over the coming weeks, we see a gravitation to these higher positive net gamma exposure concentrations at these strikes between 90 and 100. We are playing this in our own portfolio, which, by the way, our premium tier members get full access to see all the moves we're making. So definitely check that out when you get a chance. I'll put a link in the description below.
Thanks, Anthony. Lockheed Martin, LMT is going to be the last one I look at today. This is a stock that we've covered in the past as well. One thing I wanted to point out, when we saw this sharp drop off, this was on news that I believe the administration was potentially going to look at the next generation fighter being sourced from Boeing or something like that. I pay less attention to headlines these days and more attention to actual quantitative data, but we have rebounded from that low. And I noticed GEX improved dramatically after this drop. We went from negative GEX to positive as the stock has rebounded, but it seems to be divergent in that the GEX has improved a lot, whereas price has kind of been more consolidating the last few sessions. If you look at this low point a few days ago, it's a higher low than the one back in February. So that, some would consider that constructive. The largest concentrations of GEX are clustered at higher prices, like the 500 strike. And if you look at volume today, this is just today's volume. Volume was at higher strikes as well. So looking for a possible rebound to continue in Lockheed, and it's definitely a name I'll be watching in the next few days.
And if you want access to our gamma exposure dashboard, our algorithmic trading strategies, as well as the other tools and analytics we have in our platform, head on over to geeksoffinance.com. All memberships also include access to our Geek University course. This is a 5-hour option strategy, volatility, gamma exposure, and our overall trading approach. You definitely don't want to miss that. A really valuable add-on that's included in all memberships. Members also get access to our community Discord. You can see all the moves we're making in our own portfolio, as well as sharing trade ideas and setups with all the other traders in our vibrant community. Link in the description below. Thanks so much, everybody, for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next video.